All right. So, welcome everyone to our introduction to diversity. And we're excited to present some information on this topic. And one of the main reasons is at a Episcopal school, two of our primary values, and you'll see it on the logo of our shirt, are respect and love, and just this value of a diverse community. And all of that comes from the Episcopal faith tradition. And so some things I just wanted to share with you. I'm not sure how much you know about the Episcopal Church and Episcopal tradition, but one key tenet is that everybody's welcome. And so that's something we feel very strongly about as well at Holy Spirit. Everyone's welcome. And in the Episcopal Church, anyone who's within their church could have a leadership role. That leadership is a gift from God and has that opportunity to serve within the church. And the Episcopal Church has a legacy of inclusion, and that's part of their mission. And it's really important. They believe that God loves all of us, no exceptions. And so that's just a really important thing to know about the church and how that carries out into the school. And one of the things they have it tied back to a Bible verse, and I think this is really important, and it's that we seek every day to love God with our whole heart, mind, and soul, and to love our neighbors as ourselves. And that's just really important because, who is our neighbor? Everyone's our neighbor. And it's really important for us to get to know ways to help our children get to know neighbors and be able to expand our perspectives. And one other thing I wanted to share, and I love this as well, is that within the Episcopal tradition, there's a value for all kinds of different perspectives. And so one of the things they talk about, whether it's theology or just ideas or perspectives, that the Episcopal Church believes that we should engage in respectful discussions and conversations, even if we don't agree. It's important to be thoughtful and to listen to one another because we're all loved by God and all created by God. And so all of our ideas are important and should be heard and respected. And so it just makes me really proud that carries out into our school and those values that we're instilling in our children. And tonight we have Haley Maxwell, our school counselor, and we have Kelly Broadus, our media specialist. And they have some just different ideas and thoughts that they just wanted to share with you this evening. And I will go ahead and turn it over to them.
Okay, so I will start, and let me just get us opened. So everyone should be able to share my screen right now. And so we are, of course, like Michelle so graciously told us, talking about diversity and what it means to add a little bit more into your family. Okay, so for us to all get on the same page, it's really important that we have a really solid understanding of the language that is used to talk through these conversations. And before I like totally jump in here, I just want to acknowledge that this is a work in progress for all of us, myself included, even though I spent a lot of time in school studying this and consider myself like somewhat of a with it person. I will make mistakes. I'm a white woman. I don't always get this right. But it is really important to myself and as our school that we're taking steps, even if we sometimes stumble, to make sure that we're addressing these issues and teaching our students what diversity can bring to their lives, the richness that it does bring. So for us to get all on the same page, I want to talk through the language and the different nuances, because sometimes that can be really challenging and overwhelming when you're thinking through how to present this information to your children. So diversity is any dimension that can be used to differentiate groups and people from one another. So diversity can be socioeconomic, it can be, ethnic, racial diversity is what we always come to. It can be diversity in height, it can be diversity in zip code. There's a lot of ways that we can be diverse. Inclusion is a conscious organizational effort to in which diverse individuals are culturally, socially accepted, welcomed, and treated equally. So it is the act of including, pretty much. And it takes place when we talk about it in diversity and inclusion trainings. We talk through it as a very intentional thing of how are we going to be more inclusive, and it's strategic. It should be strategic to make sure that we're elevating the voices that need to be elevated. We're going to talk a lot more about equity, but equity is the understanding that an individual may need to experience or receive something different in order to maintain fairness and access. So some people have to wear glasses to see the whiteboard in the classroom. Not everyone needs a pair of glasses, but in order for those who do need glasses to access the whiteboard, to access the classroom, we need to provide them with a special tool, their glasses, to make that happen. And we'll get into that a lot more. But I do just want to say equity is very different than equality. A lot of times it's used interchangeably, and that's not the case. And we'll talk through that in a couple of slides. And then culture are the characteristics and knowledge of a particular group of people. It's all of the fun stuff, the fun things that kind of make us proud of who we are. It's the food and the music and the art that we love to share and celebrate with one another. So if we think about this through kind of the inclusion lens, or if you were walking into a room, diversity is asking who is present. Equity is who's trying to get in the room but doesn't have access. And inclusion is, has everyone's ideas been heard? How can I elevate everyone's voice in the room? So these are the questions that we're hoping to be kind of pushed closer to the forefront of our mind moving forward. This is kind of the like nitty gritty part that can be a little bit more challenging, but this is equity versus equality. So equality, the picture on the left, you will see the two children, they both have evenly distributed tools. Their ladders are the same height, they both have little bags, but the little child on the right can't reach the tree, even though he has the same tools as the child on the left. Equity are custom tools that identify and address inequality. So the child on the right side has a taller ladder so that he can reach the apples, same as the little boy or the little child on the left has a shorter ladder. So he technically has less than, but he has everything that he needs at the same time. This is a very simple explanation of equity. So it's basically, how do we distribute our resources and who needs more access to those resources? If we want to think through these images with a little bit more of a critical lens, it's important to think through it in a broader, more complicated term. So the picture implies, right, these are trees, so it implies that maybe the bend in the tree is natural, and we just want to name that that's the inequalities that we face today aren't natural or to be expected. And we have to think about the bend in the trees. The tree was potentially bent, or it was bent, as an intentional way to benefit some and harm others. There's a systematic approach to it. And then we need to be questioning why did the tree bend, and who helped it bend, who helped it get there, and what needs to be unpacked so that maybe the tree can be straightened. And with this image, it has two children, but what does it look like to spread the tree's resources to entire communities? What needs to change? What needs to be considered when we're thinking broader than just two children picking? That is pretty in-depth for a simple kind of image, but I don't want it to be I don't want to oversimplify a really, really complicated nuanced problem and concept. And so what Kelly is so beautifully going to talk about in a minute are just the different ways that we can leverage literature to offer to our families ways to celebrate diversity, culture, and practice more inclusion, and to demonstrate equity. So relating literature back to diversity, we tend to pull books that we knew and loved as children. We want to push ourselves to go broader so that we can have even more diversity in our home libraries. When we think about inclusion, we want to be including authors of color. We demonstrate to our children that people who don't look like us are welcomed and they're accepted and they're deserving of our time and our resources and our energy. In terms of equity, we know that authors in stories of color do not have the benefit of whiteness on their side. So they maybe don't get picked often for publication. They maybe don't get bought by school libraries. And it's important that we make the conscious choice to elevate these stories to ensure that great works and great creative art gets the recognition and the resources that they deserve. And the fun thing too is we get to expand our cultural understanding and we get to expose our children to a lot of fun things that we maybe don't get to know about. And so you can read a book about a certain culture and then find a restaurant or find a movie or find something that is another kind of more tangible way for them to learn a little bit more about that culture. So I am going to pass it off to Kelly and she will share her screen.
All right, so we're going to be talking about different books and how to introduce diversity to your family through books. It's one of the best ways that you'll get to build relationships with your kids as you're doing this, and it's fun and you learn together. And I just wanted to point out, especially since Haley just went over kind of the different terms, that the diversity that I'm focusing on as I introduce these books is culture. So it'll be different ethnicities and different cultures featured in the different types of books and how to kind of fuse that in. Please feel free to jump in anytime and ask me questions, ask me to slow down. I can pass over some books and come back to something else. So please feel free to ask any questions along the way. So the first thing is that make sure that all different cultures are represented in the characters and illustrations in a variety of books. So there are some books that kind of do that all in one book, and then we'll talk about books that cover different cultures kind of one at a time. And so the first one I wanted to show you, that's a fantastic one, is All Are Welcome. And I love it, tied in very beautifully with what Michelle said at the beginning about the Episcopal Church. This is by Alexandra Penfold. And this book features families from all walks of life going to school for the first time. And it shows everyone smiling and getting along, and everyone that reads this book can identify with someone in this book. I'm just going to read a little bit. I'm not going to read the whole thing. But I just wanted to show how beautiful this book is. Pencils sharpened in their case, bells are ringing, let's make haste. School's beginning, dreams to chase, all are welcome here. No matter how you start your day, what you wear when you play, or if you come from far away, all are welcome here. And I hope you can see just in the illustrations all the different types of kids. I love that they're pointing to the different places they're from. In our classroom, safe and sound, fears are lost and hope is found. Raise your hand, we'll go around. All are welcome here. Gather now, let's all take part. We'll play music, we'll make art. We'll share stories from the heart. All are welcome here. Time for lunch. What a spread. A dozen different kinds of bread. Pass it around till everyone's fed. All are welcome here. And just as a former literature teacher too, I have to say that passing around the different kinds of bread and breaking bread, the symbolism there is not lost on me. I think that's beautiful. Open doors, rush outside. We will swing, we will slide. We'll have fun side by side. All are welcome here. We're part of a community. Our strength is our diversity, a shelter from adversity. All are welcome here. And it goes on giving more examples, but I love it ends with you are welcome here. And I love that it's pointed at telling each child that as they're reading it, you are welcome here. Some other books that feature a variety of cultures and characters are here that are some of my favorites. This is a new one I've gotten in the library just in the last few weeks. It's called We've Got the Whole World in Our Hands, and it definitely follows the song He's Got the Whole World in His Hands, like God talking about that. These are all of his created people, and so it's beautiful that there's this thread that goes through the whole book connecting everyone, by Rafael Lopez. And then there's another one called It's Okay to Be Different by Todd Parr. It just points out that everyone comes in all shapes and sizes and are different, and that's okay. Todd Parr writes a lot of books that are really diverse and welcome all types of children and people, and I love Todd Parr books. And then another beautiful one by Jacqueline Woodson is The Day You Begin, and it just beautifully shows kids going through all different scenarios at school and how everybody approaches it in a different way, but it's all beautiful. So another thing to point out about books is that some are going to be subtle in the way they introduce diversity, and some are going to be quite explicit in their diversity focus. Both are awesome. So what I mean by subtle is sometimes they'll have characters that are very diverse. You'll see all different skin colors, different things that they're wearing, things that they're eating, different locations. Sometimes it might even just be that the characters live in apartments or in high rises or in parts of town that maybe aren't as nice or deep in the city. And so it's just kind of a subtle backdrop of just being able to introduce kids to everybody lives in different places. And then also with explicit diversity focus, that might be talking about a child who struggles with their identity in their culture. Maybe they've just moved to the United States and they're struggling with who they are in the United States, which is a very common thing for kids from all different cultures. And it might even talk about just different skin colors as well. So an example, and this is an author, Taye Diggs. He's actually an actor. He was in Private Practice and had been in a lot of other shows, but he has written quite a few books, and these are two of them. One of them is subtle and one is explicit. So I'll go into more detail about both of those. So the explicit is Chocolate Me. This one covers a child who is kind of it's not necessarily made fun of, but kids are questioning why his skin is the way it is. And he starts to feel a little bit bad about it. And so he comes home and he's feeling really low about it. And he tells his mom, and she compares his skin to beautiful velvet fudge and how wonderful that is. And tells him that his hair is like cotton candy, and he starts to feel really great about himself. And then she gives him this shirt that says Chocolate Me, and then he even brings those cupcakes to his friends. One of the reasons I love this book is it just recognizes that kids are going to ask questions, and it's okay. They notice differences and they say it. And so sometimes this is just a really sweet way that us as parents can even help our kids handle those situations of, hey, they said this to me and I'm not sure how to handle it. And it's like, oh, but you're beautiful. Because when you kind of look back at the book, it's not necessarily that the kids are trying to make him feel bad. They just didn't understand why he looks that way. And so sometimes we've got to help kids understand that too, that what they say, what they think out loud might hurt someone's feelings, and to be more accepting of each other. And then Taye Diggs' other book that was more subtle is I Love You More Than. And in this book, a father is conveying how much he loves his son, which is something we all do for our children. You'll notice that the characters are Black in this book. And the other thing is the father is clearly wanting his son to know, I love you even when I'm not with you. He doesn't always live with his son. So this is a family where he's not with the mom, and he is away from his father sometimes. And so his dad wants him to know, I always love you even when you're not with me. But the things said are the things that we would all say. So it's just really subtle, expose diversity to your family, because it's something that you want your kids to hear from you as well. I love you more than I love music. I love you more than I love movies. Those are the kinds of things that he says throughout the book. And then these are other books that cover race and culture more explicitly. Hair Love got a lot of attention a couple of years ago because there was a cartoon made from it and it won an Academy Award. So that could be a great one to read with your kids, and then even watch the cartoon and see how they enjoyed that as well. But it's about a dad who is working really hard to learn how to deal with his Black daughter's hair, and what love he shows her by doing that, but then the love she feels when it turns out at the end she is getting her hair ready for her mom to come home, and she is so proud of the dad for doing the hair, and the daughter says that her hair represents love because it represents her mom and her dad. Counting on Catherine is the story of Katherine Johnson, who is the Black woman who was part of the Apollo 13 team and actually is the one that really did the math that got it safely into orbit and back home. And then The Sandwich Swap is actually written by a queen of Jordan. And she kind of wrote it based on an experience that she had growing up, where she didn't understand her friend's lunch and her friend didn't understand her lunch. And they kind of got in a fight about it until they realized maybe we should try each other's sandwich. And they realized they liked it, that just because they had different food doesn't mean that it's gross. And they got to share that even with the rest of the school. Yoko Writes Her Name is about a Japanese cat. She is new to the United States, and she is excited to share how she can write with her schoolmates, and it doesn't go well. They think it's scribble instead of actually writing. And so it's a story about her getting to share her culture with the rest of her class. An Ode to a Fresh Cut just won a whole lot of awards. You can actually see all of them right there. But it's just several poems about the experience of being an African American, and one of those is having a really fresh haircut and knowing that feeling. Same but Different is about pen pals that write to each other from New York and in India, and they go back and forth and talk about how things are different and how things are the same. Other books that feature diversity more subtly, and you can just see that it's a variety of different characters. We have Ada Twist Scientist, which is actually coming out in a cartoon very soon. Car Beach, Shelter, Pet Squad, Grace for President, It's Shoe Time, I Am a Super Girl, Last Stop on Market Street, and The Other Side. All of these don't really deal head on with race. It just features all different locations, different family settings, and different characters. Another thing is, don't be afraid to introduce a culture you don't know. I think that's, as a parent, we feel like we have to have the answers a lot of times. But instead, be willing to explore those cultures with your family and with your kids. And so I just gave some examples of other cultures you can get to know through literature. Alan Say writes a lot of books about the Japanese culture. So Tree of Cranes is a really good one. The Biggest Soap is about a boy in the South Pacific, and they're kind of part of a tribe, and he has to go buy the soap for his mom. And so it kind of goes through all the different parts of island life. And then Ruby's Wish is about decades ago in China, and how she wants to be educated when girls were not really educated usually. On Mother's Lap is from the Native American Inuit tribe, and just about a boy who wants to sit on his mother's lap. Drawn Together is a sweet story of a Vietnamese American grandson and his grandfather. The Vietnamese grandson does not speak the language very well, and the grandfather does not speak English very well. And so they end up drawing together to communicate. The Name Jar is about the Korean culture. A little girl is feeling strange about her name in an American school. Saffron Ice Cream is a girl who moved from Iran to the United States, and kind of it's a little bit different here. And so she talks about what it was like in Iran versus being here in the United States. And then Grandma's Chocolate features traditional Mexican hot chocolate. and talks about the culture of Mexico, and talks about the Mayans and the Aztecs. And it's a really beautiful story. So some of the tips that I have as you're trying to introduce books into your kids' lives and into your life is one thing you could do is look for award winners. And some of my favorite awards are the Coretta Scott King Award, the American Indian Youth Literature Award, Hispanic Heritage Award, and Walter Awards, and Pura Belpre Award. So those are some of the ones that recognize diversity in youth literature, and it can be picture books, children's books, all the way through young adult literature. Also expand what was popular when you were young. Literature from decades ago tended not to represent all cultures and was predominantly white, not only in the characters, but in the authors. And when literature did include other cultures, it could be stereotyped a lot of times, and it was also very often written by a white author. So one of the things you can do is find authors who represent the culture that they're writing about. And so I've listed several of them that have quite a few books that would be great ones. And all of these authors do range from writing for preschool age all the way to upper elementary and middle school. And then also use the literature as a springboard. And Haley referred to this earlier as well, but eat the cuisine of that culture and see what you think about it. Watch the movie that goes along with it, or one that mirrors that culture. Find a YouTube Kids video about that culture to kind of keep going on. YouTube Kids has a lot of really great videos that are appropriate for kids. Feel free to have discussions, admit what you don't know. I love some of the books that have different languages featured, and many times I have no idea if I'm pronouncing something right or not. You just go for it and talk about it and maybe look it up and see. And another great way to do it as well is to visit museums. Houston is rich with museums that represent all different cultures and time periods, and it's such a great way to also kind of include what you're reading in your trips to the museums. I do have a resource list, so if you want, you can get that QR code, but we'll also share out the list, so don't worry about it if you don't have a chance to get that QR code now. We'll share out all of those books that I've mentioned are on there, plus more. And also, just since I know both of you are on here, I will say the list that this QR code points to really is focused on preschool and through elementary. And so I will make sure to put together a list as well for middle school, so that Alan will be represented as well, because I do have quite a few for middle school recommendations. And the last slide is just Haley's and my contact information. So if you need to get a hold of us, please feel free. If you want to follow up on anything, we would love to hear from you. So feel free to reach out anytime.
Yeah, this was great. We love having like new book recommendations, so that's awesome. Yeah, I think I wasn't really sure what to expect, but this was like a good intro. It's cool to like understand what you guys are teaching the kids in school. That way, like we can, also be a part in that when they have questions. I do see like Mason, who just says like whatever he wants, it's like there's a guy walking down the street the other day and he's like trying to say hello to him, and he's like, "Mom, he can't hear me." And I'm like, "Can, but what do I say?" And like he'll just tell people like, "Oh yeah, God made me to talk." I'm like, "He sure did. Yep, that's no lie." So yeah, it's good to kind of like get some ammo in my pocket to like, be able to treat him properly with the right words going forward. So this is helpful. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you. I also, I love this because I'm the diversity. So that's I think it's very important to talk about it, to what you said, just not be afraid even to just to find out, to have the conversations. We love books for that, and even if they're children book, we're still, even Alan loves, children. We have some of the ones you mentioned plus others, and I think it's very important, and it's a great resource because it's a story and it's short enough. Then it makes you curious to learn more, and also you find that that then, because for example, I'm from Venezuela, from Latin America, and the tendency is to believe that we are all Latin American people are the same. We have a lot of things in common, but we have also so many differences. So, books help a lot to kind of say, okay, well, we in Venezuela, we do not eat, let's say, very spicy food as they do in Mexico. These kind of things, I think books are always wonderful. I also wanted to share something that I discovered recently. Well, after, the whole Black Lives Matter protest and all that, there is a CNN, a group of videos that they're called "The First Time I Realized I Was Black." And it's the experience of different, very, very different people. I think there are like maybe around 30 people just explaining when they had that realization, because it's not like you are born and then you already know that you are different. And that of course applies. I mean, they were talking about, of course, skin color and race, but I think that applies to every other difference too. Because when kids are young, they don't necessarily know or notice if, some differences. And the first time that is, I thought it was very interesting, maybe more for middle school kids. But still, I mean, the language is nothing that, I mean, it's completely, not there is no bad language or anything. It's on CNN on their website. And
That's great. I would love to look into that.
so to me, it was very interesting to see it, because of course I'm a foreigner. I am diversity, but I'm not. I don't understand because we do have also racism in Venezuela, but it's a little different in historically it has like other. So I was interested to learn more about how is it here, how can we change that, how can we be inclusive or just open to what are they experiencing and all that. So that was interesting, and so this is fascinating to me. Thank you for organizing. Yeah.
It's wonderful. I was going to mention too, through our Yoginos, Yoga for Youth program that we're doing throughout the school. Usually there are different books, once a week or so, a different book will come out that will have different types of diversity that can be part of conversation. But another thing we're doing too is just having the kids be aware, we're not all the same. And that's, a great thing actually. And so say we do a meditation, and so one child might say they felt energized and another might say they feel relaxed. And it's like, do we all feel the same? No, we don't. And that's a good thing. Everyone feels how they feel. And we talked about, how our body changes and how we, can look different, and just kind of building a real natural acceptance around the fact that, that people are different. And that's what makes this, beautiful and special, that it would be a boring world if everyone was the
But I always tell my kids it would be very boring if we would all be the same. Very boring. So
it sure would be, but I too love having books as a springboard. I think they're beautiful for one thing. I just love the illustrations and the different ways the authors present their ideas. And I'm a collector of children's books myself, and my kids are grown, so they're wonderful. And Kelly, I know you're reading books such as that in the library, and Haley, even through counseling when you go around and visit classrooms as well. So that's great. Well, good. Well, any other questions before we adjourn for the evening?
No, thank you guys.
thank you.
Appreciate you guys being here.
Yes, thank you so much.
Joining us tonight, and Haley and Kelly, thank you so much. I learned a lot. I enjoyed hearing the presentation. So thank you for sharing that with us.
It's my pleasure.
All right. Well, everyone have a nice evening. We'll see you
you.
in carpool.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.